And I'm here to talk to you about something that, if I'm being honest, isn't actually very fun at all. It's the subject of death. Villains are the usual subject for death's battering ram, but it actually got us thinking, what about the villains who have never died in comics? Well, believe it or not, they are few and far between. But also to clarify before I go ahead, I'll only be looking at the mainstream continuity and not the what-if stories or tales which take place in alternate dimensions, different timelines, film adaptations, etc., etc. Otherwise, pretty much no one would qualify. So with this in mind, I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are supervillains who have never died. Number 7, Juggernaut. Professor Charles Xavier's stepbrother, Cain Marko, is better known as the unstoppable Juggernaut. His power is derived from a gem which he carries, making him virtually unkillable. Not only is he encased in enchanted armor and has muscles 4 times as dense as the average human, he's also got a healing factor that puts Wolverines to shame. In the 1997 story Juggernaut number 1, the demonic creature Despair, Despair, used his dark magic to rip the flesh off Marko, and even despite being whittled down to his very skeleton, Juggernaut continued to battle on and even taunt the demon. He's faced the most powerful beings in Marvel, including Thor, Hulk, and Onslaught, and although he's lost a fair share of his fights here and there, no one has ever managed to put him down for good. Despite being left vulnerable a number of times after he lost his magical abilities, no one has actually managed to kill him. Well, at least not in the main Marvel universe. Number 6, Scarecrow. Jonathan Crane, who prefers to go by his alter ego the Scarecrow, is one of the very few supervillains to never die in the comics or any film adaptation, and considering he appeared in every movie in the Dark Knight trilogy, that's a pretty impressive achievement. Although Crane is a surprisingly decent fighter, he relies on his fear toxins to battle Batman and other superheroes. Luckily, Batman has built up a resistance to these toxins, which has allowed him to defeat Crane time and time again. However, you might find it a little weird that Scarecrow has never died, considering he's been duking it out with Batman for nearly 80 years. After all, Superman killed Doomsday and he's meant to be immortal. Scarecrow's just some run-of-the-mill bloke with a sack on his bonnet, so how has he avoided death so many times? Well, the reason is actually quite simple. He's a Batman villain, and Batman's got a no-kill rule, supposedly. If someone else tried to kill Crane, Batman would actually do everything in his power to save him, even though Bats knows that Scarecrow is a psychopathic murderer. However, Scarecrow isn't the only Batman villain that has cheated death more than once. Number 5, Killer Croc. Waylon Jones was born with regressive atavism, which causes him to take on more and more reptilian characteristics as he gets older. In layman's terms, he's turning into a crocodile. Although this has left him violent and cannibalistic, it does have its advantages. His scaly skin is so strong that he can withstand a shotgun blast from point-blank range. It's nearly impossible for him to drown since he can hold his breath far longer than a regular human being can, and to cap it all off, he's got a regenerative healing factor like a lizard, which allows him to regrow limbs and teeth. Bane is actually one of the few people who has actually ever come close to killing Croc. Upon Bane's debut, he broke both of Croc's arms, but because of his healing factor, they were good as new within a few days. But this was just the start of the pair's rivalry. When Croc tried to take over Gotham in a recent storyline, Bane hurled him out of a window where he plummeted to the ground far below. Due to his hard exterior and healing factor, Croc survived that, so it means that even through multiple battles with Batman and Bane combined, Croc is still walking tall and proves that no one is going to turn him into luggage anytime soon. Number 4, Crossbones. Brock Rumlow, better known as Red Skull's henchman Crossbones, is a tough son of a bitch. His body has been augmented to give him super strength, speed, agility, and durability. And despite him being a bodyguard to the Crimson Nazi, it's actually his boss that has bitten the big one more times than Bone Boy over here, because he's got a death counter sitting at absolute 0. Which is weird because at first glance he doesn't actually seem like much of a threat. Although he's super strong, he can't fly or shoot laser beams or anything, and at first most people probably dismiss him as being a bit of a C-tier villain. However, Crossbones is a genius tactician, master manipulator, and a worthy adversary to some of the greatest superheroes. He's battled Cap, Luke Cage, Falcon, Wolverine, Winter Soldier, and the 2 symbiotes, Venom and Mania. Despite the fact that he's rarely armed with anything more than a knife, no one has managed to kill him yet. Number 3, Two-Face. After having half his face scarred by acid, Harvey Dent snapped and became the supervillain Two-Face. And yet, despite having a pretty mean-looking grimace, he's still just a regular man with some, at best, moderate but not exceptional combat training, so how is he still alive? And yet, for some reason, Gotham's other villains choose not to kill him, despite none of them ever wanting to work with him because he's basically such a loose cannon. Well, it turns out that he's got a built-in safety net in the form of his work as District Attorney for Gotham, because before he was assaulted with acid, in his time he'd built legal cases against every criminal in Gotham. So if anything were to happen to him, Dent would make all of his legal papers public knowledge, which would end the careers or lives of many corrupt lawyers, judges, and supervillains in Gotham. As a result, it's actually in the criminal's best interest to keep Two-Face alive at any cost. Number 2. Kingpin. Wilson Fisk started his life as a lowly thug in the depths of Hell's Kitchen. As the years went by, he worked his way up the crime ladder until he became the Kingpin, the overseer of all organized crime in New York. Despite possessing no superpowers at all, he is a monstrous-looking man, standing 6'7" and weighing 450 pounds. And according to Fisk, 98% of his mass is pure muscle, which makes him strong enough to duke it out with superheroes like Spider-Man and Captain America. However, just hold on a moment. If he's got no superpowers, then why doesn't somebody just shoot him? Well, that's the thing. When the vigilante Echo learned that Kingpin murdered her father, she shot him 6 times, including one in the face, which rendered him blind. Although shooting somebody 6 times sounds like overkill, Kingpin managed to survive. However, that didn't mean that he was in the clear, because his son's friend Sammy saw this as a perfect opportunity to become the new Kingpin and repeatedly stabbed Kingpin, leaving him for dead. And still, he was able to pull through. So just to be clear, Fisk was blinded, shot 6 times, including once in the face, stabbed repeatedly, and then left for dead, and yet made a complete recovery. Nice. And number 1, the Riddler. Now, many people would argue that Batman has the best rogues gallery. Joker, Catwoman, Poison Ivy, Ra's al Ghul, they are all excellent fighters. They are genius tacticians, but they all have something else in common too. They've all died at some point. Edward Nygma, on the other hand, well, he's got no powers and until very recently has never displayed any fighting skills. He's just really good at devising riddles. That's it. Nevertheless, nobody has been able to kill him. Since the Riddler has been battling DC superheroes for over 70 years consistently, he's probably made more appearances than any other supervillain without dying. He's fought Batman, and this is not an exaggeration, over 100 times, and he's still not dead. So the big question is, how? Well, according to Batman, the Riddler is his smartest foe. Even if he's cornered, beaten to a pulp, or on the brink of death, Nygma always has a backup plan that will guarantee that he will live to see another day. Since he's so smart, Nygma knows precisely how to manipulate people for his own agenda. When he was being hunted by a supervillain called Hush, he convinced the Joker to protect him by telling him the location of Oliver Hammett, the man who murdered the Joker's wife before he turned, well, into the Joker. Desperate for revenge, the Joker had no choice but to agree to the Riddler's terms. Since he is able to get the upper hand over Batman and even the Joker, it's actually easy to see how the Riddler has survived after all of this time, which is pretty impressive, right? As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. And if you want to try out something a bit different, then I've also got a board game channel which is called Live and Let's Dice, which I do over here on YouTube with What Culture's Blessing, that you can just go and check out if you'd like. As always, you have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.